I've started recording you.
Excellent, thank you very much. So thank you very much to Fabienne for inviting me to speak tonight. I'm celebrating my 25 years of multisensory teaching. This month I will have been teaching at the Sixth Form College for 25 years, and I'm really excited about celebrating that with everybody tonight. On my first slide, it says, celebrating 25 years of multisensory teaching, but it says here, Gillian Zoscher, who runs the Learning Differences Conventions in Australia, she said to me when she met me, I help students from the inside out. I help those dyslexic students from the inside out. I understand the difficulties they have, and I try and help them to achieve their full potential. Albert Einstein said that imagination is more important than knowledge. Knowledge is limited, but imagination encircles the world. Next. So hello, I'm Susie from the Sixth Form College, Farnborough, and you can find me on Twitter at Dr. Susie Nyman. I'll put my email address at the end of the talk. Celebrating my 25 years of the Multi-sensory Toolkit. First of all, I'm going to talk about the history, the PNEU school that I went to many years ago, the work they did there with the Charlotte Mason curriculum, Linda Bell, Farnborough Sixth Form College, and also the work I've done in curriculum support at the Oratory School. Because it's over such a long time, I decided to divide it into ages and stages: early years, primary, secondary, and eventually Sixth Form. So the history, let's begin 50 years ago. So 50 years ago, I went to school. I went to school at the age of 2, and we followed the Charlotte Mason's curriculum, and her motto was, I am, I can, I ought, and I will. And this is a fantastic inspirational quote that's even valid today that children can use. If you encourage them to learn, if you give them praise, they'll be able to reach their full potential. What we used to do every week was picture study, and this was really fascinating. I never really understood why I did it when I was a child. But what the headmistress used to do, she used to ask the children to tell you about the picture. She used to tell them how large that original work was. She'd tell the children, she'd say to the children, look at the picture for 3 to 5 minutes, looking closely at the detail and put it in your mind's eye, and then narrate that picture. Talk about that picture. And the one I wanted to talk about tonight is Van Gogh's The Arles Sunflowers. Now, Van Gogh's sunflowers, he did a series of sunflower pictures, and the first time in 1886. But then in 1888, he moved to Arles, and that's north of Marseille in Provence, and he invited a post-impressionist friend of his, Paul Gauguin, to join him in his studio. And in his studio, he actually developed the last 2 sunflower pictures, and he decided to put these in Gauguin's room. And he also put the rest of them in his bright yellow house to brighten that house up a little bit more. He used blue because it's a homage to Gauguin. He wanted to prove that he stood his ground as an artist to Gauguin. And what was really fascinating was that my dad was an antique dealer. In March 1987, I remember this well, sunflowers were sold in London for about £39.9 million. Dad at the time had some really gaudy plates with sunflowers on. He said to me, hey Susie, we're going to put these in the window, and I'm going to put the name Van Gogh by the side. And people would walk past his shop in Camden Town and just sort of take a second look and then smile as they realised they weren't the real thing. Okay, visualising and verbalising. About 35 years ago, Pat Lindemood and Nancy Bell developed this company, and they realised that it was really important for dyslexic children to visualise and verbalise their stories, i.e. make movies in their mind about those stories. And when I visited Lindemood Bell in London, it's actually in Notting Hill, Christina Petronis showed me this picture, and she said to me, what we do is we show the children these pictures and they try and make movies in their head of what these pictures are about. We give them words such as what is in the picture, an ant and a snail. How big is it? What's the background? What do you think the grass is doing? What color is the grass? What color is the snail? What's the shape, etc. So eventually that child can visualize that in their brain and then discuss it later. And I use this technique when teaching A-level biology, chemistry, physics, lots of different things, so the students can visualize the science and then verbalize, talk about it afterwards. So celebrating my 25 years here, we've got the ages and stages, early years, primary and secondary. So for the early years foundation stage, here my son went to the Pebbles Day Nursery, and from a very young age, I will be helping him to actually do well at maths and English because he struggled with it. So what we used to do, walking around the village, we used to sing 5 and 5 is 10, 6 and 4 is 10, 7 and 3 is 10, 8 and 2 is 10, 9 and 1 is 10, 10 and nothing is 10. And we used to march around the village, and he knew that. He knew it like a robot. And when he went to school, he could do 5 and 5, 6 and 4. He knew his number bonds, which was great. We used to sing all the different times tables in the car until that CD actually broke. And we used to visualize the maths. We used to look at the wall, and we used to look at how many tiles on the floor and count in 2s, count in 3s, and try and visualize what 2 times 2 looked like. Moving on from that, we used to look at the egg box and see that eggs are made up of 2 lots of 3 here, 4 and 2. 3 and 3, and then you could feel what 4 and 2 felt like, what 3 and 3 felt like, what 2 and 2 felt like. And then moving on to the 5s, 5 and 5 is 10, 6 and 4, and actually feel what 5 and 5, 6 and 4, 7 and 3, 8 and 2, 9 and 1 and 10 look like. I visited a Montessori nursery in Farnborough, and the lady there spent a lot of time talking to me, and she said it was really important, sensory motor skills. And that at the nursery they would use these number rods, and they would go through different stages. For example, for pouring, they'd start with a jug and fill it with large pasta twists and pour that into a bowl, and then they might use rice, and then finally water. It was there that it's really important to have beads, numbers of beads on a string was what she suggested. But I actually use cocktail sticks, and you can see this in the slide here. I use different cocktail sticks with different colors, and so my son could feel what 5 and 5, 6 and 4, 7 and 3, etc. look like. We also used an abacus, and so he could move that along when he was trying to add 5 and 5, 6 and 4, and then multiples of 10. Literacy was difficult. He always found English difficult, but eventually he did really well at it. So we started from an early age. We used to go to the library, and we picked up these early readers, and we would read quite a few every week. We used audiobooks, and I remember at night turning the audiobooks and listening to various different stories on Roald Dahl and the Twits and all that sort of thing. And he really, really enjoyed that, so that he was becoming familiar with the language. We also watched the videos, and then eventually he tried reading the books. But the books, for some children with dyslexia, may be difficult to access. So what you could do is you could use Project Gutenberg, and you might get a downloadable book. He also had a Kindle. He quite enjoyed that Kindle, or an Apple book, an Apple, like an iPad, you might read them on there. And what I discovered a few weeks ago is that you can access RNIB Bookshare as a dyslexic student. They have 500,000 books on there that you can access. And you can access them as audiobooks, which is really good. And you can also use Calibre Audio Library. What you might not be able to see on the right hand side because of the people's faces and things is scanning pens, and scanning pens are amazing. There's a C pen whereby you can get the pen and scan it over some text, and it will read it back to you, and you can use those in exams, which is really useful to know. At the moment, scanning pens have a 14-day free trial if anybody wants to have a go, and the link is here at the bottom of the page. For literacy, rewards are important. For children that are reluctant readers, they have to have a reason for doing it. And I created this reading caterpillar for my son. And every day, if he read a book, the books are only short ones, or a page of a book, he would then get a 20 pence, and it went on one of these circles here. And then after a couple of weeks, he would have enough 20 pences, and then we would go to the co-op or somewhere to get some stickers or something like that. He didn't really eat sweets at the time, which was a good thing. We also made pairs cards, and these were really good because he was really into dinosaurs, and so I color coded them. Plant eaters were green, meat eaters were red, animals that were in the sea might be blue, and then animals that flew in the air, they would be yellow. So he could color code these and learn all the names and recognize the pictures. Ochre books have pairs cards if you're interested, and they're very easy to follow, and there's some examples there. But what I haven't put in any of my talks before is random words. And every night, right at the end of reading and listening to stories, my son would always say, "Oh, Mum, can you do an imaginary story?" And so he used to say 4 or 5 different imaginary words, and then we tried to make up a story about it, which really helped with his creative writing. And I'll link on to that later when I talk about random sweets. At primary school, I realised that it's really important to teach children a variety of different ways, and it's a bit like the layers of an onion, where you have the core material in the middle, and different children learn that in so many different ways, and how you have to teach it in so many different ways for them to actually pick up what you're talking about. And so here you might have the core information at a particular topic, and then you might act it out, you might sing it, you might clap it, you might make a model out of it. And so this really helped all the students when actually teaching across many different years, helping at my son's primary school, but also later on in senior and also at the Sixth Form College. Literacy was tricky at key stage 1 and 2, and so what I did was I developed this key ring, and I put his spellings every week onto the key ring, and I color coded those different words with different colored flashcards. The spellings would appear every week, and quite often the spellings were on the left, and because he was left-handed, I would convert them to the right. And then I would do this on the computer. I'd do his spellings in lots of different colors. So the WHA would be yellow, the WHE would be green, WHO would be pink, and WHI would be green. But what I did find was when he had spellings with blue, he found it really difficult to read those, and so I didn't use blue for his spellings. Also, we made literacy mats, and my friend made this one from Prospect School, and we used to have these on the table to help him with his literacy. And there's another one here too. I think this one's from the Sixth Form College. For numeracy, I made these, I call them magic maths cards. And these are really useful. I did use these with my son and also another boy who I taught maths, and to actually visualize those numbers, what they look like, and they look really exciting. The times tables, I did the same thing. I used to have the tables on the right, and then the child would write them down on the left. I created these dominoes, and you'll notice that the answers don't link together. So what they had to do was you cut them out. Once times 6 is, and then you find the other half, 6. 2 times 6 is, then you have to find the green one, 12. And so that will be testing the student, their times tables. Variety of students that I work with, that they couldn't add up their maths unless they could see the numbers as dots, and so we often use giant dice. And here's some dice with different shapes, and lots of students love these different shaped dice. They like feeling them, and they can feel what a hexagon is, octagon, octahedron, etc. Shapes, it was good also to look at packaging and say, please can you pass me the cylinder tin of tomato soup, etc. And probability, a boy I worked with at the Oratory, I noticed that he couldn't do his probability questions unless I wrote all the cards out in sequence and showed him how many aces were in a pack of cards, etc. Another boy I worked with, we used hundreds, tens and units glass. I actually made glasses out of fluorescent paper, and units were the left eye, tens were the right eye, hundreds were a normal pair of glasses, and thousands we had 3 different lenses in there. And I used to get him to put the different glasses on, the boy, to tell me whether this was 100. We also made a vest out of sugar paper for centimetres and metres for measurements, and he used to wear the vest when he was doing measurement questions. We made a tie, and he used to wear this tie when we were talking about rectangles, circles, hexagons, etc., and he really liked that. We also use numeracy mats. And there's another one there. So people with young children could make these sort of things, and you can put them on the table, laminate them, and have them when they're having their breakfast. And I made various mats. If he was interested in dinosaurs, he used to have a dinosaur mat. So you could use this for anything, any topic that the student or child is working on at the time, particularly younger children. Project work was interesting because project work for dyslexic is quite difficult because it's difficult for them to access the information. So here he was asked to write about a country or island in French. So he chose La Guadeloupe because that is where Murder in Paradise is filmed. So made the slides and then watched the Murder in Paradise TV program. We used to watch that every week, and created these slides. And I asked Bryony from Ochre Books to create this sort of process in pictures that would be easier to follow. So first of all, you would speak to the child, see what they already know, and at that point the child will come out with some light bulb moments, they'll have some ideas. Then to visualize all those ideas by watching that Death in Paradise program. But if this was a different subject, if this was chemistry, they might like to watch a chemistry program, they might want to watch Vsauce, or they might like to see something in bite size, etc. So while they're watching the Death in Paradise program, they're assimilating these ideas. Now they can brainstorm those ideas from the TV program, mind map those, and what he did was he dictated his slide contents onto his iPod or iPhone, and then you can then use dictation.io or a similar program, and that converts the information into text. You put that into your slides, and you use those slides then as flashcards for your presentation if you print 2 slides to a page. And then finally rehearse that PowerPoint ready for the final presentation. And that was really important because then the child can then go over it in lots and lots of different ways. And then they really, quite often dyslexic students are really good at presenting information. They just need to get it sorted and put into order so that they feel confident in the information they're talking about. He had to learn a poem, and this complex poem here before action, and it was really hard. And so what I did was I took the poem and then I annotated it by hand and put pictures in, and then we acted it out, and then went over and over and over it. By all the glories of the day and the cool evening's benison, by the last sunset that touched the lay upon the hills when the day was done, by beauty lavishly outpoured and blessings carelessly received, by all the days that I have lived, make me a soldier, Lord. It took weeks to learn that. It was really complicated, but he did it in the end. And I do have a final recording, but I don't have very much more time, so I will move on. He had to do about the history of chocolate, and he had various slides on chocolate, and right at the end of these, I'm just going to whiz through, he had tasting and question time. And because it was difficult to read the questions, what he did was he wrote the questions on a football. And then that football he threw out to the boys in class and the girls, and they read the questions about his PowerPoint. So that's a really nice thing to do. And I did that 3 days before the GCSE biology exam, wrote 5 years of GCSE biology questions on the football. And the boys at the oratory, we have 4 around the table, and we threw the ball between them. And then they practiced those questions and the answer to the questions, which is really nice. For biology, I noticed that the students, especially at the oratory, found the nitrogen cycle really hard. And so I got a giant piece of banqueting paper and I drew it out on there. And then they understood it better. We also made revision cards. We put words and pictures on the revision cards and got the boys to walk around that banqueting roll and put the cards at the specific places that they had to go, so that they knew what nitrification was, what denitrification was, etc. And this was quite complex. And I remember it wasn't until the students walked through this that they actually understood it. French words, we use dominoes, and so you can see I've color coded these: female words pink, male blue. And you've got dominoes here, so you've got pictures and words, and use pictures one side of your brain and words the other. So that's really important for dyslexic students. For secondary school, storyboards are really good with the boys, particularly for RE and English, A-level English. This one comes from the Sixth Form College. This is colour coding exam questions, whereby you ask an exam question and put it on a pink revision card, and then you might have a yellow answer, an orange and a green answer, etc. And you look at the most common answers to that question, and then that student can then practice those answers over and over again. For paper chains, we use these at the oratory with boys doing A-level English, and the boys would link the characters together. They found it absolutely fascinating. They also like to do the sequencing of the alkanes: metheth, propute, hexex, ocnon, dec, methane, ethane, propane, butane, hexane, etc. And I suggested this to a school near Dartford, to a teacher at school near Dartford. And when I visited there a few months ago, they had covered all the pipes in the whole of the classroom with paper chains and sequenced everything to do with anatomy on paper chains. And the teacher said it really, really helped. Here's an example here to draw around a body and actually draw in the organs on the body. And the students really enjoy this. This is something that my students in my class have done. This was a boy came up to me, "Miss, I don't understand the leaf." So we made it out of funky foam. Then we made it out of biscuits, and the boys were really excited making it out of biscuits, because then I said, when we finish, you can go and take them away at break time and share them with your friends. This is an example of a leaf, something you can do outside at the moment in the park, where you can use leaves and do different parts of the leaf there, which is a really nice thing to do. And you can go out onto the forest and draw pictures of anything with leaves if you wish. Here, the same boy, we did viruses, bacteria and fungi out of pipe cleaners. And here's a really nice experiment you can do at home at the moment, the red cabbage experiment, whereby you boil some red cabbage up, it leaves a blue dye, which is the indicator. And then you can take all the different chemicals out of your chemical cupboard, put them into wine glasses or normal glasses, and then add a few drops of the indicator, and it turns all different colours, depending on whether it's acid, neutral or alkali. For A-level chemistry, we did Cornell notes. So this would be a giant piece of paper. This was banqueting roll. You could use wallpaper if you wanted to, the back of our wallpaper, lining paper. The topics in the middle, this is actually caffeine. I did primary, secondary and tertiary alcohols here, and then key definitions on the left, and then a summary of the structure of those alcohols using post-it notes. Here we've got the physics triangle, the science triangle, density is mass over volume, speed is distance over time, the chemistry one, moles is mass over relative atomic mass or relative formula mass. And the boys love moving these post-it notes around and these sort of call out signs that you can get from the pound shop that are fluorescent. They're really, really good. They love them. At the Sixth Form College, so this is my 25 years, I started 19th of June 1995. My first lesson was the kidney, probably one of the hardest things to teach in A-level biology. The night before, I remember spending the time in A&E, my husband, dotting this kidney diagram with permanent felt tips on my first ever college acetate. I explained the kidney, and then we made nephrons out of wire that I borrowed from physics. You could do all the different parts of the kidney nephron. I've since done it out of pipe cleaners, various different bits and pieces, string. But here I actually made a kidney jigsaw at Pottery, and the artist has drawn this from ochre for me. And you can take all the bits apart. You could use this for play. You could make one out of Play-Doh, sourdough, whatever you want to use, or funky foam, and then put all the bits together, because it's putting the bits together the students really can't get with the kidney because it's quite complex. For the cell, this we made, this is actual diagram the students made out of Play-Doh on the left. And my very first cell I made, I remember, I painted a cardboard box black, and I had this light, and that was the nucleolus. And then we made the nucleus out of a ball of chicken wire covered with tissue paper, and then covered all that in PVA glue. And we put all the parts of the cell, all the cell components in there that the students made. And we went through and asked the students what each bit did. And I remember a girl said, "Oh, the endoplasmic reticulum does this." And the girl that made it said, "No, it doesn't. I made that, and it does the following." It was really nice to see the students take ownership of their work, and they actually understood it really, really well. This is a diagram on the right that I stole from Pinterest. You can get lots of ideas for science there. So that is a polystyrene foam ball that they've got from maybe Hobbycraft or somewhere like that, and sliced it, taken a quarter out, and then made those bits in Play-Doh or modeling clay. As a chemist, I really wanted to find an easy way for the students to understand alkanes and alkenes, and I used lolly sticks. And they never really get fatty acids, and that's some work that I did for my master's and PhD. I actually find fatty acids fascinating, but they just don't get it because it's such a long chain. And once you get the lolly sticks out and show them, they really get it, which is really, really good. Something easy that you could do at home, or you could use matchsticks. Here is something that I did a few years ago, the equality and diversity tree. We had some training about equality and diversity in the morning. We had death by PowerPoint, and then I got my puppets out. And I said, "Please, can you bring up something to the tree on your leaf, write something on your leaf that is going to help you individually, your class, or the college with equality and diversity." And 429 staff walked up and put their leaf on that tree. It was an amazing moment. And then we took all the leaves away. I gave them to my technician, and that formed the corporate strategic plan for the next few years for equality and diversity. It was amazing. Moving from that equality and diversity tree and across to the tree of knowledge, I think for children, what you're making, and what with primary and secondary socialization, we're creating this tree of knowledge with all the subjects at the top. But at the bottom of the tree, it's all about nature, genetics, and nurture, and how you can actually improve a student's grade by nurturing them, finding the way that they learn, and encourage them. And praise means a lot to students. Now, the revision really helps with dyslexic students if you can use multi-sensory techniques. These here, as I've said before, are the paper chains that really work well. Doesn't matter whether primary, secondary, or even sixth form, they love paper chains. Here, going back to my random stories, I bought some random sweets and I taught my niece and nephew how to write stories in the back of my brother's car between Staines and East Grinstead. And we sat in the back, each child had a whiteboard, and then they stuck the random sweets on there and then wrote down the keyword, and they created this story, and it really, really helped. At the top, we've got some dominoes there that you can use for A-level English. We're getting quite close to the end now because I know I've got to finish about 22. Many of the ideas, in fact, every single thing that I've ever done with any of my students is published in this Multi-sensory Toolkit, which is published by Oka Books. You can buy it. There's the link there. It's very cheap. It's $3.99. It's not very much money at all, but it gives you all the ideas and more that I've spoken about tonight. The original pictures that were used for my multisensory teaching are in the Dyslexia Good Schools Guide. So if there's anybody who's a Senko, you'll find a little article in there. For exam questions, I've actually created this exam question task board. And I find this really useful because it has sections about what the examiner is looking for. So decoding the exam question, what is the subject, what is the topic? Because sometimes students might write an essay about something and it's completely the wrong topic. One of my students wrote a really beautiful essay about the respiratory system, and they're supposed to be writing about the circulatory system because they didn't read the question correctly. There are different types of questions and they're listed in there. The most important thing as an examiner are the command verbs: identify, name, list, describe, explain, etc. And you can get a list of command verbs from the exam boards. It's really important to have a hook. Some people call these pegs. What is a hook for you remembering that sort of thing? The hook for me for remembering Van Gogh sunflowers was my dad having that plate in his shop and him saying to me, Susie, I'm going to write Van Gogh sunflowers here in his window. It could be a story, it could be a song, it could be a mind map, it could be a revision card, it could be a video, it could be anything. But what are those key words that students got to find? What are the paragraph headings going to be? Students are given marks, but they don't know how many points and how much time. So it's really important to break that down. And if you have an analyze or evaluate question and you have to do pros and cons, then I've divided that section up into pros and cons if you want to use it. The level of response, 1 is basic, 2 is sound, 3 is in depth. And to have a little bit there on what you do and don't understand. But how are you going to answer that question? Is it going to be point, example, explanation, relate? Is it going to be related to your own opinions, opinions of others, or theory? And have you checked your SPAG? But the most important thing is, with students, if you believe, you can achieve. And this is written over the top of my door as the students enter and leave the classroom. A summary of what I've said today. I've spoken about the history, what we did 50 years ago, and how we looked at narrating what we were talking about and narrating what we had observed. And for Lindmu Bell, it was visualizing and verbalizing. I then spoke about the early years and what we did at primary school, and then the key stages 1 to 5 and what we did at sixth form, how I developed those multi-sensory techniques to help boys at the Oratory School, but also students in my class in A-level biology as well as health and social care. You can see some videos about multisensory teaching. The BDA came to my classroom and shot this video about teaching science. And Oka have produced many videos, probably about 10, and they're on YouTube. They're all free. And thank you very much, everybody, for listening this evening and taking up the time. And if you've got any questions, I think Fabienne is going to ask you to type in some questions into Zoom, and then she'll ask me the questions in a minute.
Yes, thank you very much, Susie. What a lot of different tips you've given us all.
Oh, well, I hope so.
Before we have questions, though, I want to remind everyone that you can see a film that we made at Bell House of Susie when she came to talk about mind palaces. So that's on our YouTube channel, Bell House Films, or you can see it on our website at bellhouse.co.uk. And if you're interested in more events that Bell House are holding, please do sign up to our mailing list. And you can support our work either through the donate button on our website or by volunteering, because we're a volunteer-led charity.